AITA for refusing to let my sister and her children live in my house indefinitely after she said she was temporarily in a bind and then started acting as if she owned the place. I, 40F, own a 5-bedroom house in a suburban area where I've lived for 12 years. I live alone and work as a school counselor, which means my schedule is long but somewhat flexible. My home is my sanctuary. I've spent years customizing it to suit my lifestyle, my garden, and my work-from-home needs. I am very particular about routines, cleanliness, and personal space, and I value stability above all else. My sister, Monica, 38F, has always struggled with financial stability and job security. She is a single mother of 2 kids, ages 6 and 8, and over the years, she's had a history of relying on family members for temporary housing during crises. I have helped her in the past, loaning money, letting her stay for short periods, and occasionally babysitting, but I've always tried to set clear limits to avoid being taken advantage of. About 3 months ago, Monica called me in distress. She said her apartment had a severe plumbing problem, her landlord refused to fix it promptly, and she and her children had nowhere to go. She asked if she could stay in my house temporarily while she sorted things out. I asked how long temporarily would be, and she said maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I agreed, with the condition that she respect my house rules, keep her children under control, and actively search for another place to live. I made it clear that the arrangement was temporary and that I could not accommodate her indefinitely. The first week went fairly smoothly. Monica and her children stayed in the spare bedrooms. She helped minimally with household chores, and her kids respected my rules for the most part. I prepared some meals and tried to make her feel comfortable, thinking a short-term arrangement was manageable. By the second week, problems began to appear. Monica started leaving her children's toys scattered throughout the house, used my kitchen and bathroom products without asking, and invited her friends over without consulting me. Her kids began staying up late, running around noisily, and disrupting my sleep and daily routines. I reminded Monica politely that this was temporary and that she needed to follow my house rules. She became defensive, claiming I was being too rigid and unsupportive, and said that as her sister, I should accommodate her more generously. By the third week, Monica began acting as if she and her children were permanent residents. She reorganized my pantry and kitchen cabinets, claimed parts of the living room as their space, and implied that I should adapt to their schedule. She also expected me to drive her children to activities, prepare meals according to their preferences, and adjust my daily routines to accommodate them. I told her firmly that my home and schedule were not negotiable. She accused me of being selfish and uncaring, saying I didn't understand the struggles of a mother. After a month, Monica casually mentioned that she might need to stay a few more months because her apartment wasn't ready yet and she hadn't secured a new place. I told her absolutely not. I explained that my home is my private space, that I value my independence, and that she and her children needed to find alternative housing immediately. She became extremely upset, claiming I was punishing her for being in a difficult situation and saying I was turning my back on family. She also threatened to tell other relatives that I was being unreasonable and unkind. Some family members reached out, suggesting I should compromise and let her stay longer. I explained that hosting them indefinitely would disrupt my life, routines, and work, and that I had already offered practical alternatives, helping her find a short-term rental, contributing to the first month's rent, and assisting with moving logistics. She refused all of these options, insisting that I let them stay in my house indefinitely. Monica also began using emotional manipulation. She told me I didn't care about family, implied I was selfish, and posted vague social media updates about family who turn their backs and people who prioritize comfort over loved ones, which was clearly directed at me. The situation caused significant stress, interfered with my work, and made my home feel completely invaded. My once peaceful environment had become tense and exhausting. Eventually, I had to set a firm boundary. I told Monica and her children that they needed to move out immediately, and that if they refused, I would take legal steps to protect my property. I made it clear that I was willing to help them in ways that did not involve living in my home. locating temporary rentals nearby, contributing to the first month's rent, helping with moving, and providing emotional support. Monica reacted with anger and tears, claiming I was heartless and prioritizing material comfort over family loyalty. They eventually moved into a short-term rental nearby. Our relationship is strained, and some relatives are disappointed in me for not being more accommodating, while others support my decision, saying that enforcing boundaries was fair and necessary. I feel guilty about the tension and for upsetting her, but I also feel relief that my independence and personal space remain intact. I continue to assist her in ways that do not compromise my boundaries, but the experience has caused lasting strain in the family. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her children live in my house indefinitely after she said she was temporarily in a bind and then started acting as if she owned the place. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my best friend's adult son move in with me, even though he says it's temporary and everyone thinks I should help. I, 32F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a busy city. I work full-time as a software engineer and have built a structured life around my routines. I have a small home office, a cozy living space, and a cat that I've had since college. I like having a predictable environment, quiet evenings after work, and personal space where I can relax. My apartment is not large, but it works well for me and my best friend, Laura, 33F, who has occasionally stayed over for a few nights when visiting. Recently, Laura called me in distress. Her son, Ethan, 22M, had been evicted from his apartment due to unpaid rent and had nowhere else to go. She asked if he could move in with me temporarily until he got back on his feet. Initially, I was sympathetic. I understand what it's like to be in a difficult situation, but I was immediately uncomfortable. My apartment is small, and adding another adult would disrupt my routines, my work, and the privacy I value. I told Laura that I needed time to think about it. I considered the practical implications. Our living space is compact, and my home office doubles as storage in addition to my work area. Converting it into a bedroom would make working from home extremely difficult. My cat is shy and easily stressed by strangers, and having someone move in could cause behavioral problems or even health issues. Even if Ethan's stay was truly temporary, I knew from experience that temporary arrangements often extended longer than expected, especially when someone is dealing with financial instability. Laura insisted it would only be for a few weeks. She said Ethan would pay rent if possible, help with chores, and respect the apartment. I explained that even a short-term stay could be stressful and disruptive. I also offered alternatives, helping him find short-term rentals, assisting with deposit fees, helping him search for a roommate situation, or even lending him money temporarily. Laura said these options wouldn't work because Ethan preferred staying with family or friends and needed stability immediately. When I remained firm, Laura got frustrated and began pressuring me more. She said that helping her son was the right thing to do, and that refusing would make me seem cold and selfish. She implied that if I truly valued our friendship, I would allow Ethan to stay. I reiterated that my concerns were about logistics and maintaining a household that works for me, not about a lack of compassion. She accused me of overthinking and said I was prioritizing comfort over helping someone in need. The situation escalated when Laura's parents got involved. Her mother called, saying that family and close friends support each other in times of crisis, and that refusing would be cruel. Her father echoed this sentiment, arguing that because I have a stable apartment and income, I should be morally obligated to help. Their repeated comments made me feel guilty and pressured, but I still felt my boundaries were reasonable. Ethan also reached out directly. He was polite, but clearly stressed and scared. He said he had nowhere else to go and that staying with me would provide the stability he needed. I empathized and explained that I wanted to help in other ways, like covering part of a deposit, assisting him in apartment searches, helping him find roommates, or providing temporary financial support. He insisted that living with me was the only solution that felt viable to him. I proposed compromises, letting him stay for a single night or two while we arranged alternative housing, helping him find a short-term Airbnb, or providing guidance on finding a sublet. None of these options were acceptable to Laura or Ethan. Laura argued that anything less than having him move in full-time would be inadequate, and Ethan expressed disappointment and frustration, saying he felt abandoned. James, a mutual friend of ours, even chimed in, suggesting that helping someone in a tough spot was a moral responsibility and that refusing Ethan would be selfish. I understand that many people see my refusal as unkind, but I feel strongly that allowing him to move would disrupt my routines, work, and home life. I also worry about setting a precedent where friends or family feel entitled to stay with me whenever they encounter difficulties. The pressure has made me anxious and stressed. Laura calls and messages frequently. Ethan occasionally texts to ask if I've reconsidered, and her parents continue to make comments at family gatherings. I feel torn because I do want to help, but I also need to protect my living environment, mental health, and personal boundaries. I've exhausted every compromise I can think of, yet everyone seems unsatisfied with anything short of letting Ethan live with me. I genuinely want to support Ethan and Laura in meaningful ways, but I feel my limits are being ignored. My home, routines, and well-being are at stake, and I don't think it's unreasonable to refuse a long-term stay for someone I barely know. At the same time, the guilt and pressure from Laura, Ethan, and her family weigh heavily on me. So AITA for refusing to let my best friend's adult son move in with me, even though he says it's temporary and everyone thinks I should help. AITA for refusing to let my best friend and her boyfriend stay in my apartment indefinitely after they said it would only be temporary. I, 34F, have lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city for nearly 10 years. I pay rent, utilities, and all maintenance myself. Over the years, I've invested a lot of effort into making it organized, comfortable, and private. I value my routines and personal space, and while I occasionally host friends or family for short stays, I've always made it clear that my apartment is not a permanent residence for anyone unless I explicitly agree. My best friend, Jenna, 33F, has had a history of unstable housing. She's moved between roommates, short-term rentals, and temporary leases multiple times over the past few years. About 2 months ago, she called me in a panic. Her apartment had flooded and become uninhabitable, and she and her boyfriend, Max, 34M, had nowhere to go. She asked if they could stay in my apartment for a few weeks until they figured things out. I agreed, under the condition that it would be temporary, that they stay in the guest room and that they respect my house rules. Jenna and Max both agreed. The first couple of weeks were manageable. They kept their belongings confined to the guest room, respected my privacy, and didn't interfere with my routines. I reminded them a few times that the stay was temporary, and they assured me they were actively looking for other housing. I even helped them research short-term rentals and apartments, thinking it would be a minor inconvenience. After about 3 weeks, it became clear they weren't making serious efforts to move. Jenna said that the apartments she liked were either unavailable or too expensive, and Max said that the moving process was stressful. I reminded them that my apartment is not a permanent solution and that they needed to finalize plans immediately. I also explained that their ongoing presence was affecting my work-from-home schedule, privacy, and overall daily routine. By the 5th week, things escalated. Jenna and Max began leaving clothes, bags, and other personal items in shared spaces, taking over the kitchen for long cooking sessions, and inviting friends over without asking. They started acting as if my apartment was their own, moving small furniture, leaving dirty dishes, and assuming I would clean up after them. Max began using my home office for work calls, which interfered with my own schedule. Jenna rearranged parts of the living room, claiming it made the space more comfortable, and left laundry in common areas. I told them firmly that they had overstayed their welcome and needed to find alternative housing immediately. Jenna became upset, accusing me of being selfish and unsympathetic. Max added that I was being inflexible and that moving quickly was unrealistic. They both referenced past instances where I had helped friends and family, insisting I should extend the same courtesy. The situation worsened when they started involving other friends. They framed the situation as me being unreasonable and unsupportive. Some friends messaged me privately, suggesting I compromise or let them stay longer, while others agreed that I had every right to enforce boundaries. Jenna also began posting passive-aggressive hints on social media, implying I wasn't a good friend and that I was making their lives unnecessarily difficult. I've tried multiple compromises. I offered to pay for a short-term rental for a week, assist them in apartment hunting, and even contribute to moving services. They rejected all of these options, claiming that none of it was convenient or suitable and that staying in my apartment was the easiest solution. I also proposed a strict timeline for their move out, but they insisted that it was impossible and that I was being unreasonable for enforcing it. I feel trapped in my own home. I have to constantly monitor shared spaces, enforce rules, and endure guilt trips on a daily basis. It's affecting my mental health, my work productivity, and my enjoyment of my apartment. I also feel manipulated because what was supposed to be a temporary stay has stretched into over a month with no real effort on their part to move. Friends and coworkers I've spoken say I'm right to maintain boundaries and protect my home. Some friends argue that I should prioritize helping someone in crisis, even at personal inconvenience. I want to help Jenna and Max, but I also feel that expecting to live in my apartment indefinitely is unreasonable and unfair. So, AITA for refusing to let my best friend and her boyfriend stay in my apartment indefinitely after they initially said it would only be temporary, even though they are now pressuring me and involving other friends. AITA for refusing to let my brother's friend move in with us, even though he says it's temporary and my family thinks I should help. I, 38F, live with my husband, Daniel, 40M, in a 3-bedroom house in a suburban area. We have a fairly structured home life with routines for work, chores, and personal time. I work full-time as an HR manager, and Daniel works remotely in IT. We have 2 children, Emma, 14F, and Noah, 11M, and 2 cats. Our home is organized for our family, and we value stability, quiet, and personal space. About a month ago, my brother, Mike, 35M, called to tell me that his friend, Jason, 33M, had recently lost his apartment and was asking if he could move in with us temporarily. Mike said Jason was in a tough spot and didn't have anywhere else to go. He assured me it would only be temporary, maybe a few weeks until Jason could sort something out. I was immediately hesitant. Our home is structured around our family's needs, and adding an adult I barely know would disrupt our routines, work schedules, and the dynamic with the kids. I explained to Mike that our house isn't set up to accommodate another adult, and even if Jason promised to pay rent and follow rules, it would be stressful to manage the logistics. I suggested alternatives, such as helping Jason find a short-term rental, lending him money for a deposit, or connecting him with housing assistance programs. Mike insisted that it would be fine. He said Jason is responsible, would contribute financially, help with chores, and keep out of the way. I explained that even temporary arrangements are complicated, especially for someone who is essentially a stranger in our home. I told Mike that helping Jason doesn't require him to live with us, and that I was happy to assist in practical ways that didn't involve sharing our home. Mike became frustrated, saying I was overreacting and that family should step in to help when someone is in need. He claimed that refusing Jason would be cold and selfish. I reiterated that my concerns are about my home environment, my children's routines, and my own mental health. I offered multiple compromises, helping Jason find temporary housing, assisting financially with a short-term stay, and even letting him stay overnight for a night or 2 while we arrange something more permanent. Mike rejected all of these solutions. The situation escalated when our parents got involved. They both called me, saying I should let Jason stay with us and that refusing would be unkind and selfish. They argued that because we have a stable home and income, we should offer shelter to someone in need. I tried to explain that my refusal doesn't mean I'm unwilling to help. I'm willing to assist financially, find alternative housing, and support Jason in other ways. But they insisted that nothing short of letting him live with us counts as help. Jason also contacted me directly. He was polite but stressed, explaining that he had nowhere else to go and that staying with us would be the easiest solution. I empathized with him and told him I want to help, but that our home cannot accommodate him. I repeated that I can help him find an apartment, provide financial assistance for a deposit, or help him find a roommate situation. He said none of these options were viable for him and insisted that moving in with us is the only solution. I tried to compromise further by suggesting he could stay for a single night while we sorted out temporary housing or stay over the weekend only, but Mike and Jason rejected these ideas. Mike said that anything less than living with us full-time is inadequate and accused me of being selfish. Jason expressed that he felt abandoned and disappointed, saying that he didn't understand why I wouldn't help him. The pressure has been intense. Mike calls daily, Jason texts frequently, and our parents continue to remind me that family helps each other. I feel trapped and stressed, torn between wanting to help and needing to protect my household, routines, and mental health. I also worry about the precedent this could set. If I allow Jason to move in, it could encourage other friends or family to expect the same whenever they face difficulties. I feel guilty because Jason is clearly in a difficult situation, and I genuinely want to help him in meaningful ways. However, allowing him to move in would disrupt our home, create stress for our children, and strain our relationships. I've offered multiple alternative solutions, all of which have been rejected. I feel cornered, but believe my boundaries are reasonable and necessary. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's friend move in with us, even though he says it's temporary and my family thinks I should help. AITA for refusing to let my adult son and his girlfriend move into my house indefinitely after they asked for temporary help and then started acting as if they own the place. I, 52F, live alone in a 4-bedroom house that I bought over 18 years ago. I've worked hard to maintain it and pay it off, and it's become my sanctuary after raising my kids. I work full-time as a nurse and occasionally take on extra shifts to save for travel and emergencies. My house represents stability and independence to me, so I'm very particular about routines, privacy, and boundaries. My son, Jason, 29M, has always struggled financially and with employment stability. He's been in a long-term relationship with Lila, 27F, who also has an inconsistent work history. Over the years, I've helped Jason when I could, loaning money for rent, paying for repairs to his car, and occasionally letting him stay for a few days, but I've always tried to enforce limits to avoid being taken advantage of. 2 months ago, Jason called me in a panic. He and Lila had both lost their jobs within a week, and their apartment lease was ending. They said they had nowhere to go and asked if they could move into my house temporarily while they got back on their feet. I asked how long temporarily meant, and Jason said maybe 2 to 3 weeks. I agreed, under the condition that it was strictly short-term, that they would follow my household rules, and that they actively searched for housing elsewhere. The first week went fairly smoothly. They stayed mostly in the guest bedroom, helped minimally with chores, and tried to respect my space. I cooked meals and allowed them to use my kitchen and laundry, thinking it was manageable. I believe they were taking the temporary nature of their stay seriously. By the end of the second week, things began to change. Jason and Lila left their clothes and personal items scattered throughout my house, used my kitchen excessively without cleaning, and invited friends over without asking. They also stayed up late, played loud music, and disrupted my routines. I reminded them of the temporary arrangement and requested they follow the rules we had agreed on. They became defensive, saying I was being too controlling and that I should prioritize family over comfort. By the third week, their behavior escalated. They started claiming the living room and parts of the kitchen as their own, rearranged furniture, and implied that I should accommodate them fully since I was family. They also expected me to adjust my schedule to drive them to job interviews, errands, and other appointments. I reminded them that while I wanted to help, my home and routines were not negotiable. Jason accused me of being selfish, and Lila said I was turning my house into a prison instead of a home for family. After a month, they casually mentioned that they might need to stay a few more months until they found jobs and save enough for a deposit. I told them this was unacceptable. I explained that my house was not meant for indefinite guests, that I valued my independence, and that I could not continue hosting them. Lila became emotional, claiming I was turning my back on family, and Jason said I was destroying the family bond over convenience. Some relatives called, suggesting I should compromise and let them stay longer, arguing that I should be more understanding. I explained that hosting them indefinitely would disrupt my routines, personal space, and peace of mind. I had already offered alternative ways to support them, helping find a short-term rental nearby, contributing financially to the first month's rent, and assisting with job applications. They rejected all of these solutions, insisting I allow them full access to my home. They also began using emotional manipulation. Lila said I didn't care about my own children. Jason implied I was cruel for prioritizing a house over family, and both of them started posting vague social media updates about family turning their backs and people who only care about themselves. I began experiencing stress, disrupted sleep, and anxiety from the constant tension in my home. Finally, I had to set a firm boundary. I told them they had to find another place to live immediately, and that if they refused, I would take legal steps to protect my property. I reiterated that I would help them in ways that didn't compromise my independence or home, locating rentals, assisting financially for a short-term stay, and offering emotional support. Jason and Lila reacted angrily, claiming I was heartless and prioritizing material comfort over family loyalty. They eventually moved into a short-term rental nearby, but the relationship between us remained strained. Some relatives are disappointed with me, saying I should have been more accommodating, while others believe I acted reasonably by enforcing boundaries and protecting my home. I feel guilty because I want to help my children and care about their well-being, but I also feel relief that my independence, personal space, and home are intact. AITA for refusing to let my adult son and his girlfriend move into my house indefinitely after they asked for temporary help and started acting as if they owned the place. AITA for refusing to let my brother live in my new house, even though he claims he has nowhere else to go and it would only be temporary. I, 36M, recently bought my first house. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom place in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I worked for years to save up for this house, and it's the first home I've ever owned. I love having a space that's completely mine, where I can decorate, organize, and live according to my own routines. My house is my sanctuary, and I take pride in having a home I can call entirely my own. My younger brother, Ryan, 29M, has always struggled with stability. He's moved around a lot, bounced between jobs, and has had financial difficulties for years. I've helped him before in small ways, letting him crash on my couch for a few nights, helping him move, or giving him advice on budgeting and job hunting, but I've never hosted him long-term. A few weeks ago, Ryan called me in a panic. He said he had lost his apartment due to unpaid rent, broke up with his girlfriend, and was temporarily unemployed. He told me he had nowhere else to go and asked if he could move into my house until he got back on his feet. He said it would only be temporary, maybe a few months at most, and emphasized that he trusted me more than anyone else. He said it would make a huge difference for him and that it would help him rebuild his life. I was immediately uncomfortable. My house is my private space, and having Ryan live there for an extended period would disrupt my life, routines, and work. I value my independence and the control I have over my home. I told him that while I wanted to support him, I couldn't have him move in for months at a time. I suggested alternatives. He could stay with friends, rent a short-term apartment, or I could help him find a temporary solution through a local shelter or short-term housing program. I even offered to help him financially with deposits or first month's rent for a temporary place. Ryan insisted that my house would be perfect, that was spacious enough, and that he would be careful not to disrupt my life. He repeatedly said it was just temporary, and that he would be gone as soon as he found a new place. He also implied that if I really cared about him as a brother, I would let him stay, framing it as a moral obligation rather than a request. I told him again that I wasn't comfortable with a long-term stay. I explained that my home is my personal space and that having him there for months could create tension and stress for both of us. I emphasized that I wanted to help him in ways that didn't involve him living in my house and offered to assist with finding a job, temporary housing, and financial support, but I could not compromise my independence and privacy. After I refused, Ryan got upset and angry. He accused me of being selfish and said that if I truly cared about him, I would let him stay. He claimed that I was prioritizing my comfort over his well-being and that I was being unreasonable for not accommodating him in a time of need. He also started telling other family members and mutual friends that I refused to help him, portraying me as uncaring and cold. Some relatives have contacted me, suggesting I should compromise and allow him to stay temporarily because he has nowhere else to go. A few friends have expressed that I could manage a short-term arrangement and that it would be a kind and generous thing to do. Others, however, say I am right to set boundaries, especially since living with someone long-term can significantly affect your mental health, privacy, and daily routines. I feel guilty because I do care about him and want him to be safe and stable. I've tried to help in every way I can without sacrificing my home and independence, but he refuses to accept anything less than full access to my house. I've also considered letting him stay for a very short period, like a week, to help him transition, but I'm worried that temporary could stretch into months, and I'm not prepared to compromise my independence for that long. I've tried to explain calmly that my refusal doesn't mean I don't care about him, but he frames it as me being unwilling to support him at all. I also worry that if I give in, it will set a precedent for future requests, where he might expect to move in whenever he encounters difficulties, and I could end up resenting him or feeling trapped in my own home. I love my brother and want to maintain our relationship, but I also need to protect my home and my personal life. I feel like saying no is the responsible choice for both of us, even if it makes him upset. I've offered support in multiple other ways, helping with temporary housing, financial guidance, job leads, and emotional support, but he refuses to accept any alternatives that don't involve living in my house. So AITA for refusing to let my younger brother stay in my house, even though he claims he has nowhere else to go and insists it would only be temporary? AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me after she financially ruined me years ago? I, 35F, grew up in a family where money was always a source of stress and conflict. My parents were well-meaning but financially irresponsible, and it affected me and my younger sister, Claire, 31F, in very different ways. Growing up, I was very careful with money, saving wherever I could, and planning for the future. Claire, on the other hand, tended to be more impulsive and often relied on our parents to cover her mistakes or overspending. When I turned 18, I received a college scholarship that covered a significant portion of my tuition, but I still needed money for living expenses, books, and other fees. My parents promised that they had set aside a fund to help me with these costs. I trusted them completely, believing I could focus on school without worrying about financial survival. A few weeks before my first semester, my parents told me the fund had been used to cover Claire's expenses. According to them, she had an opportunity to attend a special summer program abroad, and it was too important to miss. They insisted that all of the money saved for me would be redirected to her, and I would have to figure out the rest myself. I was devastated. I had to take out loans and work multiple part-time jobs while attending a full course load just to survive. It took years to pay off the debt I accumulated because of their decision. Claire, meanwhile, completed her program without financial difficulty and continued living comfortably with the support of our parents. This created a huge imbalance between us, and I spent a long time resenting my parents and, to some degree, my sister. Fast forward to now. I have a stable career as a project manager, rent a small apartment that I can comfortably afford, and have built up some savings. I finally feel like I have a sense of financial security. Claire, on the other hand, has moved several times over the past few years and recently lost her job due to company downsizing. She contacted me asking if she could move in temporarily until she finds another place. I was immediately uncomfortable. I reminded her that I had struggled for years because of financial decisions that favored her at the expense of my education. I explained that I could not accommodate her, both because of the financial strain it could create and because I felt it would be emotionally unhealthy for me. I offered to help her in other ways, such as helping her search for apartments, connecting her with potential job opportunities, or assisting with budgeting. She rejected all of these alternatives, insisting that living with me is the only viable solution. When I refused, Claire reacted angrily. She accused me of being selfish, saying that families should support each other in times of need. She also argued that the past is irrelevant and that holding grudges over what happened years ago is unreasonable. My parents became involved shortly afterward. They contacted me repeatedly, urging me to reconsider and framing it as a moral obligation. They argued that I am financially stable and could easily help Claire without significant hardship. I explained to them that financial security is not just about having money. It's about maintaining independence and protecting the stability I've fought for over the past decade. I also reminded them that taking Claire in could lead to tension, resentment, and potential conflict, which I want to avoid. My parents dismissed this, saying I am overreacting and making a moral judgment out of past grievances. The situation has created a lot of tension in my family. Claire refuses to speak to me unless I agree to let her stay, and my parents have started implying at family gatherings that I am cold and unkind. Relatives have weighed in, with some agreeing I should help because family comes first, while others privately tell me I'm justified in setting boundaries. I have considered compromise solutions, such as letting her stay for a very short period or paying for a week in a hotel, while she secures her own apartment. But Claire and my parents reject these suggestions, insisting that only living with me will solve her problems. I also worry that even a temporary arrangement could become permanent and create resentment on my side, especially given the history of financial inequity between us. I feel trapped between wanting to maintain family relationships and protecting the life I have built through years of hard work and careful planning. I want to support Claire, but not at the expense of my own financial security and emotional well-being. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me after she financially ruined me years ago, even though my family says I should help. AITA for refusing to host my best friend's wedding at my home after she demanded I cover most of the expenses. I, 37F, live in a spacious house in a suburban area. Like Samantha's expectations go far beyond reasonable support, and complying would be harmful rather than helpful. Since my refusal, Samantha has made vague social media posts implying that I am unsupportive, and the tension has created awkwardness among our mutual friends. I worry that our friendship may be permanently damaged, but I also feel that giving in would be a mistake that compromises my home, finances, and well-being. AITA for refusing to host my best friend's wedding at my home and declining to cover the majority of the expenses, despite pressure from her and mutual friends. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my brother move into my new apartment, even though he says I owe him for moving in first. I, 30M, recently signed a lease for my first solo apartment in the city. It's a modest 2-bedroom unit, nothing fancy, but it's close to work, affordable, and finally gives me a space I can truly call my own. I've lived with roommates and in shared housing for most of my adult life, dealing with noisy neighbors, unpaid rent from roommates, and constant conflicts over shared responsibilities. Saving for this apartment took years of careful budgeting, extra shifts, and sacrifices, so finally having a place that's mine and stable feels like a huge accomplishment. My younger brother, Josh, 26M, has had a much more unstable situation. After college, he moved to the city, but has bounced between sublets, roommates, and occasionally staying with friends or family. He has a decent job, but tends to spend impulsively and has difficulty saving consistently. Recently, his current living situation fell apart when his roommate moved out suddenly, and his lease ended at the same time, leaving him without a permanent place to stay. A week after I moved in, Josh called me asking if he could move in temporarily until he found a new apartment. I explained that I wasn't comfortable with him moving in indefinitely. My apartment is small. I rely on the second bedroom as an office for remote work, and having a full-time roommate, even temporarily, would disrupt my daily routines. I also value my privacy after years of shared living and felt that accommodating him long-term was not realistic. Josh immediately became defensive. He accused me of being selfish and said I was prioritizing my comfort over family. He reminded me that when I moved into shared apartments in the past, he had helped me with small things, covering a portion of rent, helping me move furniture, or supporting me during stressful periods. According to him, that means I now owe him a place to stay since I moved into my apartment first. He framed my independence and stability as a moral obligation to provide him with housing. I tried to reason with him. I told him that the help he had given me in the past was never intended as a debt to be collected later, and that my apartment is my personal space, not a family dormitory. I explained that letting him live there indefinitely would disrupt my life, interfere with work, and potentially create tension between us. I offered compromises. He could stay for a weekend or a few days. I could help him find a temporary rental, or I could even contribute financially to a short-term lease. He refused all alternatives, insisting that only moving in full-time would solve his problem. The argument escalated when he began involving our parents. Josh told them I was refusing to help him in a time of need and claimed I was being ungrateful and cold. Some relatives have suggested I should prioritize family over convenience and warned that my refusal could harm our relationship permanently. Others have told me that my apartment is mine and that it's reasonable to set boundaries with siblings. I feel torn because I want to support him, but I also feel that my boundaries and independence should be respected. Josh has been sending increasingly emotional texts, saying I'm punishing him for circumstances beyond his control and claiming that I don't care about family. He insists that since I moved in first, it's my responsibility to ensure he has a place to stay. I feel guilty because he's genuinely struggling, and I want to help him, but I also know that giving him would enable dependency and disrupt my life. I'm concerned about precedent. Josh has a history of relying on friends and family for extended periods, sometimes overstaying his welcome and causing tension. Allowing him to move in now could set expectations that I will always accommodate him, and I worry it could strain our relationship permanently. I want to help him, but I also need to maintain my privacy, independence, and stability. Some friends have told me I should compromise and let him stay for a few weeks to support him, emphasizing family loyalty. Others agree with me, saying that my apartment is my sanctuary and I have every right to refuse a full-time roommate, even if it's a sibling. I've considered offering financial assistance, helping him find temporary housing, or co-signing a short-term lease, but he refuses anything that doesn't involve moving in full-time. I want to support him in ways that don't jeopardize my independence. I've suggested multiple solutions that could help him without giving up my home, but he insists that anything less than full-time residence won't work. I feel like either choice, letting him move in indefinitely or refusing, risks damaging our relationship and causing long-term tension. I want to help, but I also need to protect my hard-earned independence. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother move into my apartment, even though he says I owe him for moving in first. AITA for refusing to let my best friend and her family stay in my house for an indefinite period, even though she says they have nowhere else to go. I, 35F, bought my first home about a year ago. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I've spent the past year decorating, organizing, and settling in. This is the first home that's truly mine, and I value the independence and privacy it gives me. I finally feel like I have a space where I can relax, host friends on my terms, and live according to my routines. My best friend, Melissa, 34F, has been in my life since college. We've been very close, supporting each other through breakups, career changes, and family drama. She has a husband, David, 36M, and 2 young kids, ages 3 and 5. Melissa and David have struggled financially for a while and have lived in a small, cramped apartment that they've been unable to upgrade due to expenses. I've helped them in small ways over the years, like babysitting, lending money for emergencies, or helping them move. A few weeks ago, Melissa called me, clearly stressed. She explained that their apartment lease was ending sooner than expected because the building was being sold, and they hadn't been able to find another suitable place. She said they were in a bind and asked if they could stay in my house temporarily while they figured things out. She promised it would only be for a few weeks, maybe a month, and emphasized that it would be much easier with the kids in a stable environment. She also mentioned that she trusted me more than anyone else and that I was her closest friend, so she felt comfortable asking. I was immediately hesitant. My home is small, and I live alone. Hosting a family of 4 for any length of time would significantly disrupt my life and routines. I explained that I understood their situation, but I wasn't comfortable having them stay long-term. I offered to help in other ways, helping them find a short-term rental, assisting with moving logistics, or even helping financially with a deposit or a hotel if needed, but I couldn't have them living in my house for an extended period. Melissa insisted that it would only be temporary and that they'd be careful not to disrupt anything. She said the kids would adjust, that they'd handle their own meals, and that it would be a huge relief for them. She framed it as me helping them in a true emergency and implied that if I were a good friend, I would say yes. I told her again that I couldn't commit to them living in my house, even temporarily beyond a very short visit. I explained that I valued my independence and that having them stay for even a few weeks could potentially turn into months, which I wasn't prepared to manage. I tried offering compromises, like letting them stay for a single weekend or helping them secure a short-term rental, but she insisted that staying at my house was the only viable option. Melissa became upset and emotional. She accused me of being selfish and said that a true friend would help in times of crisis. She implied that I was prioritizing my comfort over her family's well-being. She also told some mutual friends that I had refused to help, which has led to some awkward conversations and judgment for people in our social circle. Some friends say I should have made an exception because it's only temporary and would be helping a family in need, while others think I am right to protect my own space and boundaries. I feel guilty because I care deeply about her and the kids. I want them to have a safe place to stay, and I've tried to help in ways that don't require them living in my house. I've even offered to help cover hotel costs, assist with short-term leases, and babysit occasionally to ease their transition. But Melissa refuses to consider any solution that doesn't involve moving in with me. I've considered letting them stay for a very brief period, like a weekend, but I'm worried that temporary might stretch indefinitely. I also worry about the impact on my mental health, my routines, and my privacy. I've tried to explain all of this calmly, but Melissa frames it as me being unwilling to support her family at all. I want to maintain our friendship, but I also need to protect my home and independence. I feel like saying no is the responsible choice, but it comes with guilt and the fear that it might damage our relationship permanently. I've offered multiple forms of support, financial, logistical, emotional, but she refuses to accept anything less than living in my home. So AITA for refusing to let my best friend and her family stay in my house indefinitely, even though they claim they have nowhere else to go and insist it would only be temporary. AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's new car after he spent my college fund. I, 36F, have had a tense relationship with my family for years, mostly because of money. Growing up, my parents were financially reckless and favored my younger brother, Matt, 32M, in ways that caused me a lot of hardship. I was careful with money, saved wherever I could, and planned for the future. Matt, on the other hand, often relied on our parents to cover his mistakes or fund his wants, and he learned early that he could ask for financial help without consequences. When I turned 18, I was awarded a partial scholarship to attend a reputable state university, which covered most of my tuition. My parents promised me that a fund they had been building would cover the rest of my tuition, books, and living expenses. I trusted them completely and assumed I would be able to focus on my studies without worrying about money. About a month before I started college, my parents told me that the fund had been spent on Matt. He had been accepted into a summer program abroad, which they insisted was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that could not be missed. They said it was crucial to redirect the money to cover his tuition, travel, and expenses, leaving me responsible for the remaining costs of my education. I was devastated and furious, but I had no choice but to take out loans and work multiple part-time jobs to cover the shortfall. It took years to pay off the debt, and it was a constant source of stress. Matt, meanwhile, completed his program without financial worry and had extra money left over for hobbies, travel, and social activities. The stark difference between our experiences caused long-standing resentment, but I tried to move past it and focus on building my own life. Fast forward to now. I have a stable career as a project manager, own a small condo, and am financially independent and debt-free. Matt, meanwhile, has been living paycheck to paycheck and recently told me he wanted to buy a new car. Not just any car. He wanted a brand new SUV, something well above what he can realistically afford. He came to me and asked if I could lend him the money to cover it, claiming it was temporary and that he would pay me back over time. I was shocked and immediately refused. I reminded him of how he benefited from the money that was supposed to be my college fund and explained that I could not trust him with a large sum of money. I also pointed out that lending him thousands of dollars would put my financial security at risk and that I have no obligation to finance his wants after all the hardship caused by past decisions. Matt was furious. He accused me of being selfish and holding a grudge for years. He said I was letting old resentment control my decisions and that he had earned the right to a car and that I should support him as family. He claimed that I was prioritizing money over family bonds and suggested that my refusal would permanently damage our relationship. My parents got involved shortly afterward. They called me repeatedly, insisting that I should help Matt, saying that family comes first and framing my refusal as morally wrong. They also suggested that if I didn't help, I would be seen as cold and ungrateful by the rest of the family. My parents argued that lending him the money would be temporary and harmless, and that it would be a way for me to give back after he had supposedly contributed to family happiness. I tried to offer compromises, such as helping Matt research more affordable vehicles, assisting with budgeting, or helping him find financing options that wouldn't jeopardize me. He rejected all of these ideas, insisting that only a direct loan from me would allow him to get the car he wants. My parents also dismissed these alternatives, saying I was being difficult and unreasonable. This has created a huge rift in the family. Matt refuses to speak to me unless I agree to fund the car, and my parents have started implying to other relatives that I'm selfish and unkind. Some extended family members agree that I should help because families should support each other, while others privately tell me I am justified in setting boundaries after years of being disadvantaged by past financial decisions. I feel trapped between wanting to maintain family relationships and protecting my own financial well-being. I love my brother and want him to be happy, but I also cannot ignore the pattern of financial irresponsibility that has affected both of us, nor can I risk my own stability for something that he cannot responsibly manage. I have tried to remain calm, reasonable, and empathetic, offering alternative ways to support him without giving him a large sum of money. However, everyone involved seems to interpret my refusal as cruelty or a lack of familial loyalty. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my brother's brand new car after he spent my college fund and has a history of financial irresponsibility, even though my parents say I should help. AITA for refusing to let my adult daughter move back in after she squandered her inheritance. I, 55F, have an adult daughter, Lily, 26F, who recently finished college. A few years ago, she inherited a significant sum of money from her grandparents, enough to cover living expenses, invest, and even put a down payment on a property. At the time, I advised her to be careful with the money, invest wisely, and live within her means. I also offered to help her budget and plan for the future. Lily assured me she had a plan and was confident she could manage it herself. Over the past few years, it became clear she was not responsible with the funds. She spent extravagantly on designer clothes, expensive vacations, gadgets, and dining out. She also invested in risky ventures suggested by online influencers without consulting me or a financial advisor, which led to significant losses. Eventually, she depleted the inheritance entirely and had no savings left. About 2 months ago, Lily called me, panicked, saying she had no money and her apartment lease was ending in 2 weeks. She asked if she could move back in with me while she got back on her feet. I was shocked and frustrated because she had repeatedly ignored my advice, spent recklessly, and now expected to come home without any accountability. I explained to her that my home is my sanctuary and that I cannot support her financially because I am planning for my own retirement and have my own bills and responsibilities. I also pointed out that moving back in after her irresponsible decisions would not help her learn to manage money or take responsibility for her actions. I offered alternative forms of support, helping her find a budget-friendly apartment, connecting her with financial counseling, assisting her with job applications, and helping her create a realistic budget to live independently. Lily became very upset. She argued that I was being selfish and cruel, claiming that a parent should always provide a safety net for their child in times of crisis. She insisted that moving back home would be temporary and promised to contribute to groceries and bills once she got a job. I reminded her that promises mean little without a proven track record of responsible behavior, and given her history of reckless spending, I could not take that risk. Since then, she has started telling other family members and friends that I refuse to help her in her time of need. Some relatives have reached out, suggesting I reconsider and saying that family always helps each other. I feel guilty because I do understand that she is in a difficult situation and could benefit from a stable home environment, but I also know from experience that enabling her now would likely create a repeat scenario in the future. My partner, Mark, 57M, supports me and agrees that Lily needs to take responsibility for her life. He pointed out that if we allowed her to move back in, she would expect financial support, leniency with rules, and possibly continue spending recklessly. He also noted that it would be disruptive to our home life and could create ongoing tension. I have offered compromises. I can help pay for the first month of rent at a new apartment if she agrees to strict budgeting and financial counseling. I can help her find roommates to share costs, and I can assist with job opportunities to ensure she becomes self-sufficient. She refuses these options, insisting that the only acceptable solution is moving back into my house for free until she gets back on her feet. Some friends say I am right to set boundaries because I have already done my part in raising her and providing guidance, and that she must now learn to take responsibility. Others say that family sometimes requires sacrifices and that helping her move back in could prevent further hardship. I feel torn because I love my daughter, but I also recognize that giving in could reinforce bad habits and make her dependent on me indefinitely. I'm also concerned about long-term consequences. Allowing her to move back could damage our relationship if tensions rise, and it could affect my peace of mind and daily life. I want to support her in ways that encourage independence, but she perceives anything less than full accommodation as rejection. AITA for refusing to let my adult daughter move back in after she squandered her inheritance, despite offering alternative support to help her regain financial stability and independence. AITA for refusing to let my cousin live in my new apartment indefinitely, even though she says I owe her because I moved in first. I, 32F, recently signed a lease for my first solo apartment. It's a modest 2-bedroom unit in the city, nothing extravagant, but it's close to work, safe, and the first place I've it all to myself. I've spent over a decade living with roommates, subletting, and dealing with shared housing problems. Unpaid rent, noisy neighbors, conflicting schedules, and constant compromises. Finally having my own place has been a huge milestone for me, and I take pride in maintaining it, keeping it organized, and enjoying the privacy I've longed for. My cousin, Rachel, 28F, has had a more unstable living situation. After college, she moved to the city for work, but she's bounced between temporary sublets, roommates who left abruptly, and stays with friends or distant relatives. She has a decent job, but she's inconsistent with budgeting, often spends impulsively, and rarely has savings. Over the last few months, her current housing fell through because her roommate moved out and her landlord did not renew the lease, leaving her temporarily homeless. A week after I moved in, Rachel called me, sounding distressed. She asked if she could move in with me until she got back on her feet. I explained that I wasn't comfortable with her moving in indefinitely. My apartment is small. I use the second bedroom as a home office, and having a full-time roommate, even temporarily, would disrupt my daily routines and privacy. I also explained that after years of shared living, I needed to enjoy my first space of true independence. Rachel immediately became defensive. She said I was being selfish and accused me of prioritizing my own comfort over family. She reminded me that when I lived in shared apartments or temporary housing in the past, she had helped me, covering small bills, helping with moves, and supporting me emotionally. She framed these past favors as if they now entitled her to live in my apartment, claiming that since I moved in first, I owe her access. I told her that the help she had given me in the past was never intended as a debt that could be collected later. I explained that letting her live in my apartment indefinitely would interfere with work, disrupt my routines, and compromise the independence I finally earned. I offered compromises. She could stay for a weekend or a few days. I could help her find a temporary rental, or I could contribute financially to a short-term lease. She refused everything except moving in full-time, saying that nothing else would solve her problem. The argument escalated when she involved our parents. Rachel told them I was refusing to help her in a time of need and claimed that I was being ungrateful and cold. Some relatives have suggested I should think about family first and warned me that my refusal could damage our relationship permanently. Others have said that my apartment is mine and that she is overstepping by expecting indefinite residence. I feel torn because I want to support my cousin, but I also feel justified in protecting my boundaries and independence. Rachel has been sending increasingly emotional messages, claiming I'm punishing her for circumstances beyond her control, that I don't care about family, and that my independence and comfort are somehow morally wrong. I feel guilty because she's genuinely struggling, and I want to help, but I also know that giving in would enable dependency, set a precedent, and disrupt my own life. I'm concerned about precedent because Rachel has a history of relying on friends or family for extended periods, sometimes overstaying her welcome or disregarding house rules. Allowing her to move in now could create tension if she doesn't respect boundaries and could set expectations that I'm always obligated to accommodate her. I want to help her, but I also need to protect my privacy, independence, and the home I worked years to secure. Some friends have told me I should compromise and let her stay for a few weeks to support her, emphasizing family loyalty and compassion. Others agree with me, saying that my apartment is my sanctuary and that protecting my space and independence is reasonable. I've considered offering financial assistance, helping her find temporary housing, or even co-signing a short-term lease to make it easier for her, but she refuses anything that doesn't involve moving into my apartment full-time. I want to support her in ways that don't jeopardize my well-being, but she interprets any boundary I set as selfish. The situation is already straining our relationship, and I fear that giving in could create long-term resentment or dependence. At the same time, refusing her makes me feel guilty because I care about her and want to help. I feel like either choice, letting her move in indefinitely or refusing, risks harming our relationship and causing lasting tension. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin live in my apartment indefinitely, even though she says I owe her because I moved in first. AITA for refusing to let my sister move into my house, even though she claims she has nowhere else to go and it would only be temporary. I, 37F, recently bought my first house. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in a quiet suburb. I've worked for over a decade to save for this place, and it's the first home I've ever owned outright. I love having a space that is entirely mine, where I can set my own rules, decorate however I like, and live according to my routines. For the first time in my life, I feel like I have true independence and stability. My sister, Lindsay, 31F, has always had trouble maintaining stability. She's had several short-term jobs, moved frequently, and has struggled financially. Over the years, I've helped her in small ways, loaning money, letting her crash for a night or two during transitions, and giving advice on budgeting and career decisions, but I've never hosted her long-term. A few weeks ago, Lindsay called me sounding desperate. She said her apartment lease had been terminated unexpectedly because her landlord was selling the building. She explained that she didn't have any family or friends she could stay with, and she asked if she could move into my house temporarily until she got back on her feet. She emphasized that it would only be for a few months, maybe less, and that she wouldn't be a burden. She also added that she trusted me more than anyone else and that it would make a huge difference to her to have a stable place to live. I was immediately uneasy. My house is my personal space, and having Lindsay live with me for an extended period would completely disrupt my routines, privacy, and the lifestyle I've built for myself. I told her that while I wanted to help, I couldn't have her move in long term. I offered alternatives. She could stay with other family members, find a short-term rental, or I could help her financially with a deposit or first month's rent. I even offered to help her search for a temporary place or assist with moving logistics. But I was firm that my house could not become her residence for months. Lindsay insisted that my house would be perfect for her. She said it was spacious enough that she could contribute to bills and that she would be careful not to disrupt my life. She framed it as me helping in a real emergency, implying that a good sister would say yes. She continued to press the point that it was only temporary and that she would leave as soon as she found a new apartment. I told her again that I wasn't comfortable with a long-term stay. I explained that my house is my sanctuary and that having her there for even a few months could cause stress and tension for both of us. I emphasized that I wanted to help in ways that didn't involve her living in my home, and I offered concrete assistance with finances, temporary housing, and job leads. She refused to consider any solution that didn't involve moving in with me. After I refused, Lindsay became upset and accusatory. She told me I was being selfish and that family should come first. She said it was hurtful that I wouldn't help her in her time of need and implied that I was prioritizing my comfort over her well-being. She also spoke to some mutual friends and other family members, framing me as cold and unsupportive. Some relatives have even contacted me, suggesting that maybe I should compromise and allow her to stay temporarily because she supposedly has nowhere else to go. I feel guilty because I do care about her and want her to be safe. I've tried to support her in every way I can without giving up my independence, including offering financial help, temporary accommodations, moving assistance, and emotional support. I've also considered a compromise, like letting her stay for a very short period, but I'm worried that her idea of temporary could easily stretch into months, and I'm not prepared for that. I've tried explaining calmly that saying no doesn't mean I don't care about her, but she frames it as me being unwilling to support her at all. I'm concerned that giving in would set a precedent where she expects to move in whenever she faces difficulties, and I could end up resenting her or compromising my own mental health. I love my sister and want to maintain our relationship, but I also need to protect my home and independence. So AITA for refusing to let my sister move into my house, even though she claims she has nowhere else to go and insists it would only be temporary. AITA for refusing to financially support my sister's business after she spent my college fund. I, 35F, have had a tense relationship with my younger sister, Lily, 31F, ever since we were teenagers. Growing up, our parents often favored her when it came to money, opportunities, and special treats, while I was expected to be responsible and self-sufficient. I don't hold grudges lightly, but the financial decisions my parents made affected my adult life significantly, and Lily benefited from them repeatedly. When I was 18 and preparing to go to college, my parents told me they'd saved a fund to help cover tuition, books, and living expenses. I trusted them completely and planned my life around that promise. Then, about a month before my first semester, they informed me that the fund had been spent on Lily. According to them, she had an opportunity to attend an exclusive summer program overseas, and it was too important to miss. They claimed it was essential to redirect the college fund to cover her tuition, travel, and expenses. I had no choice but to take out loans and work multiple part-time jobs while attending school full-time. It took years to pay off the debt, and I struggled constantly to make ends meet. Lily, on the other hand, completed her program without financial worry and continued living comfortably. She pursued hobbies, traveled, and had opportunities one could never have afforded. This created a lasting imbalance between us and was a source of resentment, though I try to move on and focus on building my life. Fast forward to the present. I'm financially stable debt-free, and have a steady job as a project manager. I even own a small condo. Lily, meanwhile, has been struggling financially. She recently told me she wants to start a business, an online boutique selling handmade items. She has a business plan, but she doesn't have the capital to start, and she asked me to lend her a substantial sum of money, suggesting I could either gift it or offer a low-interest loan. I was immediately uncomfortable. I reminded her that the reason I am financially stable is that I had to work hard to pay off my college debt, because the fund that was supposed to help me was spent on her. I explained that I cannot justify lending her such a large sum, given her past financial irresponsibility and the precedent it would set. I offered to help in other ways, such as advising her on budgeting, helping with business planning, connecting her with potential investors, or even helping her find grants and loans for startups. Lily reacted very negatively. She accused me of holding grudges and being selfish, claiming that I was letting old issues ruin her chances at success. She said that families should support each other, that I am rich enough to help, and that refusing is cruel. She insisted that my refusal shows a lack of love and support for her dreams. My parents got involved as well. They started calling and texting, insisting that I should help financially because I am in a better position than she is. They framed it as a moral obligation, suggesting that I am being heartless and that this will damage my relationship with her permanently. They also implied that contributing money would be a way to repay the family for all the sacrifices made over the years, though from my perspective, it feels like I have already paid enough. Other family members have weighed in too. Some say I should help financially because family comes first, while others privately tell me I am justified in protecting my own finances after years of being disadvantaged. I've tried compromise solutions, such as offering a smaller contribution that I could afford without strain, or offering to fund a specific part of the business, like materials for the first month. Lily rejected all these ideas, saying only full financial support from me would make her business viable. I feel trapped. On one hand, I want to maintain family relationships and support my sister's ambitions in some way. On the other hand, I cannot ignore years of financial inequity and put myself at risk again. I worry that giving her money would not solve the underlying issues and would likely lead to further tension, especially if the business fails or she mismanages the funds. I also fear it would create a precedent where she expects me to financially bail her out for future endeavors, which I cannot sustain. I have tried to remain calm, reasonable, and empathetic, offering alternative forms of support that do not involve large sums of money. Despite this, my refusal is being interpreted as cruelty, selfishness, and a lack of family loyalty. I feel torn between protecting my financial security and preserving family harmony, but I also know that sacrificing my stability is not fair to me after the struggles I endured in my early adult life. So, AITA for refusing to financially support my sister's business after she spent my college fund, even though my parents and family say I should help. AITA for refusing to let my roommate's brother move in after he repeatedly caused problems in the past. I, 28F, live with my roommate, Megan, 27F, in a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. We've been living together for about 3 years, and for the most part, things have been smooth. We split rent and utilities evenly, share chores, and generally respect each other's space. A few months ago, Megan asked if her younger brother, Tyler, 24M, could move in temporarily because he had just been evicted from his apartment. She explained that he didn't have anywhere else to go and that it would just be for a few weeks until he found a new place. I was hesitant from the start. Tyler has a history of being difficult to live with. In the past, he stayed with friends or family during short-term crises and frequently caused tension. He rarely cleaned up after himself, ignored house rules, spent money irresponsibly, and often left others to cover his obligations. I explained to Megan that while I empathize with her brother, I was not comfortable adding another adult to our small apartment under those circumstances. Megan assured me that Tyler had changed, that he was committed to being responsible, and that she would make sure everything went smoothly. I agreed reluctantly, thinking that perhaps this time would be different, but I set clear conditions. Tyler would contribute to rent and utilities follow our existing house rules, and respect my personal space. Megan agreed and said she would communicate this to him. Tyler moved in, and things immediately started going wrong. He ignored the rules Megan and I had set. He left dishes in the sink for days, played loud music late at night despite our repeated requests for quiet, and brought over friends without notifying us. He spent our communal food without replacing it and frequently borrowed money from us for things like rides and takeout, claiming it was temporary, but never paying us back. About a week in, I told Megan that I could not continue living like this. I reminded her of the conditions we had set and that Tyler had already broken them multiple times. I explained that this was creating stress for both of us and that I felt my home was no longer a comfortable space. Megan tried to mediate, saying he was under a lot of pressure and that I should give him a chance. I told her that I had already given him a chance and that the pattern was repeating exactly as I had feared. Tyler overheard our conversation and became confrontational. He accused me of being selfish and controlling and claimed that since Megan had invited him, he had a right to live there. He said that if I refused to tolerate him, it would ruin our friendship and that I was being mean to a family member in need. He also started making passive-aggressive comments, leaving notes around the apartment about how I was unhelpful and unsympathetic. Megan was torn. She wanted to support her brother, but also recognized that his behavior was affecting my well-being. She tried to enforce some rules, but Tyler would ignore them and complain to her that I was overreacting and making him feel unwelcome. This created tension between Megan and me, and even though she privately agreed that Tyler was difficult, she hesitated to take a hard stance because she didn't want to upset her brother. I suggested alternatives, helping Tyler find a short-term rental, assisting with applications for housing assistance programs, connecting him with temporary work to cover expenses, and offering support in ways that didn't involve living in our apartment. Tyler refused everything except moving in with us. Megan, feeling guilty, asked if I could just compromise for a week or two, but I realized that even one more week would likely extend into months given his track record. Some friends and family have weighed in. Friends generally agree that I am right to set boundaries and protect my living space. Some relatives, however, think I should prioritize helping family, saying that refusing Tyler is harsh and uncompassionate. I feel torn because part of me empathizes. He is in a difficult situation, but another part of me recognizes that allowing him to stay would reinforce a pattern of irresponsibility and disrespect. I'm also worried about long-term consequences. If Tyler stays, he may expect similar arrangements in the future, and Megan may feel resentful toward me for not being accommodating. The stress has already affected my mental health, and I can't compromise my well-being for someone who has repeatedly demonstrated an inability to follow rules or take responsibility. AITA for refusing to let my roommate's brother move in after he repeatedly caused problems in the past, despite his claim that he needed temporary housing and my roommate's insistence that I give him a chance. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.